Hello and thanks for watching today at noon. I'm Mackailyn Johnson. Today in Texas, 21 families woke up without their loved ones following another horrific mass shooting in the U.S. What we know now. And many parents are struggling with how to talk to their children about the Texas school shooting. If that applies to you, we have the tips on what to do right now.
We did it. And I know a lot of political experts who said it was impossible to clear a field of 6.
Leslie Rutledge was one of many candidates claiming victories. Just ahead, a look at last night's top races. But first, we're joined with meteorologist Nathan Scott. Nathan, the morning started a little foggy, a little wet, but how are things looking right now for us?
Well, Mackailyn, you look right behind you. You can see the clouds are darkening just to the east of downtown Little Rock. Some folks are seeing a lot of clouds. Some folks are seeing a good downpour at this time. Other folks, you're seeing some sunshine. Here is the visible satellite. Some breaks in the cloud cover just to the west of the metro. Temperatures warming up into the low to mid 70s. But take a look at the radar, and we've got a boundary moving through just to the east of downtown Little Rock that is sparking off showers and eventually some thunderstorms. So here you see a band of heavy rain moving through Cleburne County, White County, extending down into Cabot, Jacksonville, Kerr, Scott. This is all moving its way off to the east. So if you're watching us in Lono County, you're going to see some heavy rain along with Pine Bluff in Jefferson County. How about Lincoln County, Arkansas County? As this boundary continues to charge its way to the east, you'll have that potential of seeing some showers and storms. Severe weather risk cannot be ruled out. It's very, very slim, but 1 or 2 storms could try to produce some damaging wind gusts and maybe even some hail. Here's what you can expect today. Highs topping out into the mid to upper 70s with that chance of spotty showers and storms. I'll let you know if the rain is out of here for your Thursday coming up.
Well, one day after one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history, people everywhere are asking why it happened again and what can be done to stop the carnage. Aaron Jones has the latest.
Sadness and grief overwhelm Uvalde, Texas and the nation following another mass shooting. An 18-year-old gunman barged into an elementary school Tuesday with an assault-style rifle and high-capacity magazines.
It just started shooting children and teachers that were inside that classroom, having no regard for human life, just a complete tragedy.
Authorities say the gunman shot and wounded his grandmother before the school rampage. They are investigating what led up to the massacre.
No friends, no girlfriends at this time that we know of, was unemployed, no criminal history, no gang affiliation. So we're trying to determine exactly what the motive was.
At least 21 people, including 19 young children, died. In an address to the nation last night, President Biden called on lawmakers to take action.
Why do we keep letting this happen? Where in God's name is our backbone to have the courage to deal with it and stand up to the lobbies? It's time to turn this pain into action.
Some parents waited all night here at the Civic Center to see if their child survived the massacre. Authorities even using DNA samples to try and identify some of the victims.
My daughter, Annabelle Guadalupe Rodriguez. Her name, she's only 10 years old.
Jesse Rodriguez eventually got word his daughter was one of the victims. As this community learns more about who was killed inside the school, they are grappling with a sudden and unbearable loss. Aaron Jones, CBS News, Uvalde, Texas.
This afternoon, President Joe Biden says Congress has the power to prevent another tragedy like the one in Texas, and the Senate Majority Leader says they are moving quickly on legislation. But a Texas senator is instead calling for more armed law enforcement in schools.
We need to devote far more law enforcement resources to stopping violent criminals, to preventing these kind of absolute acts of evil.
Senator Ted Cruz making those statements despite the Robb Elementary School staffing armed officers that worked to stop the active shooter yesterday morning. Cruz, along with Governor Greg Abbott and former President Donald Trump, are scheduled to speak at the NRA conference in Houston this Friday. Victims' names are starting to emerge this morning as anguished parents in Uvalde, Texas were asked to submit DNA to help identify their children. Lilia Luciano has more from Uvalde.
Parents gathered at Uvalde Civic Center late into the night Tuesday to await word on their children's fate. A volunteer we spoke with took these images as parents worked with authorities to gather DNA samples to help them identify the victims.
The scene was pretty horrific, and I understand that some of the bodies were hard to recognize.
Among the confirmed victims, 9-year-old Amerie Jo Garza. Her father posted this photo to Facebook with a single word comment: why? Annabel Guadalupe Rodriguez was just 10 years old. Shortly after the shooting, her father's desperation was clear as he arrived at the school grounds.
I gotta find her. After the shooting, they don't know where she's at.
Eva Mireles taught 4th grade at Robb Elementary School, trained in bilingual and special education. On the school's website, she wrote that she had a supportive, fun, and loving family. Her husband, Ruben Ruiz, is an officer of the Uvalde police force. Officials say the gunman went from classroom to classroom, shooting indiscriminately. As parents spoke with authorities, the horror of what happened to their children became clear.
There were some families that were upset and raising their voices, some of the law enforcement officials, where they would be given the information as far as a confirmation of death, and then the families would break down. Imagine the worst of the worst that could ever happen to a parent.
We know that some of those students are still recovering in this hospital. It's a predominantly Latino community that's still suffering, that's in grief, and that has been changed forever. We also know from the district that today there will be grief counselors. Today was supposed to be the second to last day of school, but of course school was canceled indefinitely yesterday. Lilia Luciano, CBS News, Uvalde, Texas.
And this afternoon, Governor Asa Hutchinson weighing in on the horrific shooting. He tweeted this, saying, quote, "As a father and grandfather, I am devastated by the tragic and senseless shooting yesterday in Uvalde, Texas. We are increasing school security plans in Arkansas to ensure our children will be safe at school," end quote. And the Arkansas governor's race is set for November. Sarah Huckabee Sanders wins the Republican nomination with a decisive victory. Sanders ranked in 83% of the vote, and Chris Jones also pulls a big victory, easily winning the Democratic primary. Jones won 70% of the vote there. And as for the lieutenant governor's race, Leslie Rutledge avoided a runoff in the crowded Republican race for lieutenant governor, the race being called just before 2 a.m. A crowded 6-person field had a higher chance of going to a runoff. It would have been with State Senator Jason Rappert, who finished in second. And here's the nail biter of the races this afternoon. Votes are still being counted for the Court of Appeals race in Central Arkansas. It's between Stephanie Cassidy and Wendy Wood. Right now, Wood has a razor-thin lead. Out of nearly 76,000 votes, just 126 votes separate the two, with a third of the votes still not in. This is for Court of Appeals Judge District 6, which covers part of Pulaski, Saline, and Perry counties. And today, we've learned those outstanding votes are from Perry County. Turning now to the congressional races, all of Arkansas's current congressmen up for re-election will now move on to the November general election. In Arkansas's 1st congressional district, Congressman Rick Crawford advanced from the Republican primary. Crawford picking up 75% of the vote. He faces Democrat Monty Hodges, a current state representative from Northeast Arkansas, and independent Roger Doherty. Meanwhile, in the 2nd congressional district, Representative French Hill defeated Republican challenger Conrad Reynolds. The two men have faced each other before. Reynolds, a colonel in the U.S. Army, also tried to win a seat in Congress back in 2014. Now, the races for Congress is set this morning, with some familiar names winning their primaries, advancing to the November general election. That includes Senator John Boozman, who managed to avoid being primaried by Jake Beckett, a former Razorback football player. The race wasn't as close as many people thought. Boozman avoided a runoff, winning 58% of the vote. Beckett only managed 21%. Conservative activists Jan Morgan and Heath Loftus were also on the ballot. Boozman tells our Sarah Habakowitz he's ready to get back to work in Washington.
Well, we've got some big problems that we're dealing with. We've got inflation, the border is absolute chaos, the list goes on and on. So we're going to be working to push back on the Biden-Harris administration. to stop the overreach there.
Now remember, you can find the complete election results for federal, state, and local races everywhere you connect with THV11. That's on THV11.com, our free news app, and of course, right here on TV. And today, President Biden will sign an executive order aimed at reforming use of force rules for federal law enforcement agencies. It comes exactly 2 years after George Floyd died while in police custody. Local police departments are encouraged to follow the revised guidelines, but are not obligated to do so. And the Federal Trade Commission is launching an investigation following reports that baby formula sellers were price gouging during the ongoing shortage. The FTC wants to know about any deceptive, fraudulent, or other unfair business practices aimed at taking advantage of families.